to you from windy downtown Beaufort, and it's a breezy day here. It must be in the upper 70s, low 80s, and but it's a nice day. Hope everybody's enjoying this good weather, at least after this hour. And this is the last book sandwiched in for 2022. Wow. It's a sad occasion, as you might expect. We certainly enjoyed bringing this to you this year. And if I could speak for Karen and Donna and the Friends of the Library Board, it's been a pleasure. And we are glad everybody was able to spend an hour with us every Monday from January till now. So again, thank you for allowing us to do this. We have a good program for you today. And it's Scott Gibbs is going to talk about The Cigar Factory, a novel of Charleston. And before we get to that, though, I'd like to turn it over to Karen Warner, and she's going to talk a little bit about the auction. If everybody remembers that, the auction. So Karen, take it away.
Thank you, Gene. So we closed our first ever virtual virtual auction last night, and we have we're just really excited about the results of that. Something we had never done before, and it was a pivot thanks to COVID, and some of our board members just jumped in and made this work, and it was phenomenal. Donna Armour, Marilyn Hartrick, and Sandy Schuster, and we ended up with a good showing. We're very grateful to our local sponsors who presented us with gifts that we were able to make available to people. 3 things you need to know if you're a bidder and you're sitting there wondering if you won. 1, you can go to the Friends of the Library homepage. We put a big green button on it. Hit the green button and it'll take you to the bidding site. You can log in as yourself, and when you do, if you bid and won and therefore owe us money, your donations and contributions, then it will be on your, where it says my account in the top right hand corner. If you do the menu there'll be a little red flag, and it'll tell you what you want and how to pay. And so one is, did you win? The second thing is, how do I pay? You can do that. Just put your credit card in. You might also, if you prefer, wait, and you'll get an email from Sandy Schuster, and she will, there will be an invoice attached and you can pay whichever one you want to deal with. And then how do you get your stuff? So by tomorrow afternoon, everything should be available to you at the Scott Street Library at 311 Scott Street in downtown Beaufort. And if you have any questions, feel free to send any one of us an email, and we'll be able to help you and hold your hand through the whole process. So it was a learning experience. We're really excited. We did really well, and we're so grateful for you and to the people who donated their gifts. So thank you. Back over to Gene.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I can honestly say that I bid on some of the auction items, and I did win a few, and I actually paid for those already. The website was very easy to use, very straightforward. So it shouldn't be hard for really anybody. But again, as Karen mentioned, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be glad to help you walk through that and get you your items. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Carrie Major, who will in turn introduce Scott Gibbs. And just to tell you a little bit about Carrie, and she's got a tremendous resume in her own right here. And we don't even need Scott Gibbs. We have Carrie looking at her resume. So, Scott, just kidding. So Carrie was born and raised on St. Helena Island, and here in the city of Beaufort. She's a lifelong resident. She's been educated in the Beaufort County school system. She's got a master's degree in counseling from Webster University. She worked as a as a facilitator for Beaufort County Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department. And she's currently retired from that department. She's a counselor, a motivational speaker, and she's a workshop and seminar facilitator who gives her time and talents to help others. And she's focused on the youth of Beaufort County. And she has a tremendous background. And Carrie, welcome to Book Sandwiched In. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Gene. It's a pleasure to introduce this person. He's been a friend of mine for nearly 40 years. Scott is a native of Beaufort, and he's presently retired from the Department of Social Services. Scott was a benefits integrity claims specialist, and he has worked for DSS for 33 years. Scott is a member of the Mount Sinai Baptist Church here in Beaufort, and he serves as the church treasurer, the director, and a musician. He's also director and musician of the St. Paul Young Adult Choir. Scott graduated from South Carolina State University and has a BS degree in business administration. And Scott is a very busy person. Scott holds membership in the following organizations: Carrie's Low Country Modeling as president, Fellowship Concert Choir as the business manager and a musician, the Gospel Friends of Beaufort as the president, and of course, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He's a life member, number 8415, and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated of South Carolina District Miss Black and Gold competition coordinator. He's also the national coordinator for Alpha Phi Alpha Miss Black and Gold competition committee. He also is a member of the original Gullah Festival of South Carolina, where he serves on the entertainment committee as chairperson. And Aunt Pearlie Sue and Gullah Kinfolk, he is the artistic director and a musical director. And Scott is also, and I keep saying also this, Scott does a whole lot of things. He is a member of the Beaufort County State Employees Association. He's the president there. The Beaufort County Youth Conference. He's co-chairperson, Project Love Cotillion as the coordinator. He also is a member of the Gullah Geechee Consortium member. He's an election poll manager. He's team leader for the March of Dimes of Beaufort. He is also part of the Gullah Traveling Theater as a board member, the Beaufort Arts Council as his vice chair, and a member of the Charles Lynn Brown Center Task Force. So as you see, Mr. Scott is a very busy person. He's also a very talented vocalist and musician and director, and has directed several productions here in Beaufort and other places. He has directed fashion shows, pageants, musicals, and plays, and they're just too numerous for us to mention. He has won many honors and awards. Just to mention a few, the state of South Carolina Certificate of Service for 33 years with the Department of Social Services. The state of South Carolina House of Representatives gave Scott a resolution H4086 plaque, and he was honored with the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Xi Gamma Lambda chapter Charles W. Green Award of Merit for 7 or more consecutive years of service with their graduate chapter here in South Carolina. Scott has also received the Living Legend Award from Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the South Carolina district. Scott's motto in philosophy of life is to always believe and trust in Jesus Christ, because he will always direct your path. And we're so grateful that the Lord has allowed Scott to cross our path. So we present to you, Mr. Scott Allen Gibbs. Thank you. Love you, Scott.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much, Carrie, for that wonderful, warm introduction. Sometimes when I do listen to that, I don't realize that I've actually been involved in all of that. And to speak on Carrie, who I consider now my BFF and best friends forever. And as she said, it's been over 40 years, and we've served on many, many organizations together. And so when I was asked to have someone to come in and to introduce me, she was the first one that came to mind that should do this. And so I'm honored, Carrie, by you doing that. And so thank you so very much. And so I want to thank also the Friends of the Beaufort Library for affording me this opportunity to be a part of this event. I have to admit that when I was asked, I was shocked because I'm more of a singer and a performer and an actor, and so I hadn't been on the literary scene or arena. And so when I was asked to review a book at the time, nothing was going on. The pandemic was happening, and we had all this free time, and it was months and months away before it was time for me to do this. And so I said, "Oh, sure." Sure. And then things started getting busy again. And so now here we are. And again, I'm honored. I consider it a privilege for you to even consider me for this. I wish you just asked me to come in and sing. That would have been easier. But I hopefully you'll enjoy. So again, what a pleasure it is for me to be here today to review this wonderful book entitled The Cigar Factory, a novel of Charleston, South Carolina. And so not to bore you any longer, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. This novel, and I'm going to share my screen now, I think it is. Here it is. Yes. Um, so this novel was written by Michelle Moore, who grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. But would visit her family in Charleston, South Carolina, and there she would listen to the accents from the Charleston side of her family, who proudly hailed on the East Side and Upper King Street. The novel was inspired by interviews with her family members who once worked at the factory. This exceptional novel celebrates the poetry of the Gullah Geechee language and the birth of a song, We Shall Overcome, a song of protest during the 1945 tobacco workers strike. And I related to this book because I'm actually Gullah Geechee. I was born right here in Beaufort all my life. I went away for college and came back, and I started contributing to the community. So when I read this book, I could relate to a lot of what Michelle was actually sharing in her book. I also had the opportunity to visit Sierra Leone, West Africa, where I found there's a connection to me, my family. And so it was an awesome trip. It was an eye opener for me. And so when I read this book, a lot of this resonated with me. Now, in the book, Michelle does provide a glossary of Gullah words that are used throughout the book to help the reader with the pronunciations and also to help them with the meanings of those words to understand the story better. So you don't go into the book not without any help. So she gives you a little help with some of the language. And she was also fortunate to have Pat Conroy provide a forward for her. So there were a number of characters in the book. Some of the main characters are Malia Amy Ravenel, and she's a young African American woman. She's a devout Catholic. She went as far as sixth grade and works as a stemmer in the basement at the cigar factory. She was determined to provide a good education for her son, Kofi. Cassie McGonigal is an older white woman. She too is a devout Catholic, and she works hard as a cigar maker. She wasn't warm and fuzzy and nurturing. Bridget McGonigal is Cassie's niece, and Bridget was innocent and overly trusting person. Joe Ravenel is Malia Amy's husband, and he was the captain of the Mosquito Fleet. an African-American fisherman who rowed and sailed out to sea in small boats and supplied fish to those in Charleston. Manus was a white man who is unpolished, or he's an unpolished, aspiring intellectual thinker within his limitations of education. He is flawed by his drinking, infidelity with prostitutes, and works as a merchant sailor. And he marries Bridget. Kofi, his given name at birth is Vincent de Paul, and he's the son of Malia, Amy, and Joe. Patrick is the son of Manus and Bridget. Bina is an African-American woman who works as a stemmer as well in the basement of the cigar factory, strong-willed, very opinionated, very vocal African-American woman. Mr. Rowland Sr., he's the cigar factory manager prior to the 1945 strike. And lastly, Mr. Schmitz, who's an elderly foreman, or early foreman, and then he was the sexual predator at the factory. Rosie Ann, a handsome gal, haul away, Rosie, haul away, gal. Fancy slippers and fancy shawl, haul away, Rosie, haul away, gal. Rosie going to the fancy ball, haul away, Rosie, haul away, gal. Following a brief prologue in the book, the time period is 1917 to 1946 and broken into 5 chapters covering those years. The majority of Charleston's population prior to 1920 were African descent. The novel is a story of 2 working families, one Black, one white. The rich men are referred to as high buckra. That's a Gullah Geechee phrase. The white working class family is Irish, Catholic, and poor. Cassie McGonigal, poorly educated, daily enters the world of the cigar factory where the lung-destroying dust of the tobacco leaves changes the color of her skin and the smell of her body. Bridget McGonigal, after graduating from high school, goes to work beside her aunt and is the second generation of the McGonigal women to enter the world of the cigar factory. It was piecework for 10 grueling hours a day for 6 days a week in a sealed building. And the building was sealed because the draft would dry out the leaves. For Bridget, however, the tobacco dust clouds overwhelm her frail lungs, leaving her suffering with a form of brown lung disease. Now, the work that was produced was the biggest selling 5-cent certified Cremo and the 10-cent Roy Tan cigars. The building is presently located at 701 East Bay Street and is on the National Historical Register. During the 1930s, the American Cigar Company was Charleston's largest employer. In the 1940s, however, it was the location of the civil rights labor strike, and during that strike, the anthem, "We Shall Overcome," rose to prominence. Michelle's novel, therefore, is an historical novel tracing not only the history of the 2 families, but the politics that spread through the working days of the factory women, white and Black, on assembly lines segregated by gender and race. The Black family workers are, of course, the daughters of the enslaved and a part of the cigar factory segregation history, are obliged to enter the factory's door separate from the white workers. Now, Malia Amy, again, an African-American woman who goes to work in the factory as a young mother, is as much an admirable protagonist as Bridget and Cassie McGonigal. Black workers, white workers can be distinguished inside the factory by the colors of their working smocks, washed out blue for the Black workers and green and white for the white workers. The McGonagalls worked upstairs in the factory, rolling cigars by hand. Malia Amy Ravenel works in the basement, stemming the tobacco leaves. Now the constant, repetitive, rolling motion damages nerves and dulls the touch. Segregation keeps the two groups divided in their common plight, which includes sexual harassment from the foreman. Both families live marginal lives, entwined. They live, they shop, they cook, they worship, and they go to work. Now, Michelle captures the desperation not only in the factory, but also in the lives of the legendary mosquito fleet that rose daily miles offshore for their catch. Now, when the novel fans out, to catch the atmosphere of the Charleston's alleys, she narrates the dialect of Negro street fish vendors singing out their catch in street lingo. Her descriptive powers are superb. Here are a few examples. Swim, swims, be raw, raw. Swims today, swims tomorrow. Shack steak don't need no gravy. Shack steak done eat my baby. Swim, swims, be raw, raw. And a flower vendor are usually females. Yes, ma'am, I's got flowers. You ask me how's I sell them? 10 cents a bunch. I's got white lilies, jasmine, vine. A charcoal vendor. Charcoal, charcoal, charcoal here, charcoal here. I's got all kind, fresh and fine, just off the vine, 3 for a quarter. Yes, ma'am, I's got flowers. Now the tensions in the story starts abound in around October of 1945. And after becoming unionized, the workers launched a strike that lasted 5 months. It's a distinctive moment in South Carolina's history, which marks the beginning of our social justice advocacy. The novel owns impeccable research, which adds authenticity to the fictional nuances of combining the story of one Black family and one white family forging friendships through their struggle. To use a Gullah Geechee phrase, Michelle speaks true mouth, which means she speaks the truth. The cigar factory was built in 1882 with a 5-story structure and was a commercial site of Charleston Manufacturing Company and later the cotton mills. In 1903, the American Tobacco Company leased it and purchased it outright in 1912. And it's now known, of course, as the cigar factory. It produced cigars until 1973. It employed some 1,400 workers in 1945. And 900 of those were who are women of African descent. The cigar factory workers struck for higher wages and an end to discrimination. The strikers sang a gospel song, "I'll Overcome Someday," which became one of the most popular freedom songs of the civil rights movement. And then it was revised to "We Shall Overcome." 1,000 snares are set for me and mountains in our way. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday. And in the Black churches, we always use that, and I'm talking about when we didn't have drums, we didn't have keyboards, we had the wooden floor, and we would use our feet and to help the rhythm. And so when we sang songs like this, we also did it with what we call the gullah clap. And you would sing that song with that gullah clap. I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday. Michelle wrote a script of the Cigar Factory, a play of the Cigar Factory in 2 acts, and I was fortunate to be a part of that performance reading, which made me, of course, enjoy the book even more. So I'd like to thank you again for this opportunity, and I encourage you to read the book. And this is what the Cigar Factory appears to look like today. Again, it's on the National Historical Register, as well as the song, I'll Overcome Someday, which was revised to We Shall Overcome. I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. Within my heart, I shall not yield. I'll overcome someday. Thank you so very much.
I think we can unmute and applaud, Scott. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we have, does anybody have questions? And if you have questions, you can go to the chat box and do it that way, or you can actually unmute yourself and ask the question directly.
So Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
I know the Cigar Factory is still there. I actually went to a restaurant that's in that complex now. It's quite scale. But do they do tours of the Cigar Factory? The old, the story that is told in this novel?
I do, and when I talked with Michelle, I did understand that they do tours there, and unfortunately, like you said, the inside of the building of course doesn't look anything like what it was because of all the restaurants and stores there. But yes, I do understand that they do tours.
Thank you,
Scott. We have another question for you here. This is in the chat room. What ultimately closed the factory and what happened to those workers?
Well, what ultimately is that they had the strike, and they were able to get the rights that they were asking for, more monies, be paid more monies, and to be paid equally, because again, the white workers worked upstairs and the Black workers worked downstairs. So after that, there were no longer cigars being made there, and I think it was after the strike in they worked up until 73, I think it was.
Okay. Any other questions? Somebody had a question. I think I might have talked over them a little bit.
I did, but Scott answered it when he answered the previous question.
Okay.
Hi there. That's Carolyn. Thank you for joining, Carolyn.
You're welcome. I was interested in the results of the strike, and you answered that.
Thank you.
Scott, where can we hear you perform around?
Well,
Beaufort?
that's a good question because we've been traveling. We just came back from Mississippi. Did a performance at Jackson State University there. So the next time will be during the Gullah Festival, which is in May, Memorial Day weekend. Specifically, our performance will be on the 28th, and the production was called Decoration Day. It will be held at the university here in Beaufort. And so please look out for that. I would love for you to come and see that production.
Thank you.
Yes.
And the Gullah Festival is it also on Waterfront Park?
It is. And we're so happy because, it's been 2 years since we've done it because of the pandemic. And so we're so happy now that we're going to be allowed to perform it. So it will be at the Waterfront Park.
Thank you.
Yes.
Getting a few kudos coming in, Scott, about
Ah!
presentation.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so much.
and people can't wait to read the book.
Yes. Awesome book. And of course, it goes into lots and lots of details. And just like I said, she brought it to put it into a play, which was outstanding. She presented it the first time at Spoleto. I think it's in 2016, and so that was one of their premier events. That reading. And even if you go online to her website, Michelle Moore, you can see some of the excerpts from that.
There was a comment here. It said, I found the beginning fact when Cassie was introduced, I kept having to remind myself that she was Irish, not African American, but learned the language from her surroundings.
Exactly. And when the person that was casted for the play, you would think that was actually Cassie, because those that live in Charleston have that thick Gullah accent, and it wasn't just for African Americans. So both whites and blacks actually spoke the Gullah language.
Everybody liked your singing.
So if ever I'm invited again, let me just do the singing part.
Hey, there you go. That sounds reasonable.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan Haupt mentioned to everybody that the dramatic reading was also performed at Trident Tech next to the cigar factory at Conroy Literary Festival. A full-length play script is being developed, and films have been recently optioned.
Wow. Oh, good news. I think I did 3 performances. I think one was here in Beaufort at the university here. And the other 2 were actually in Charleston.
Okay. Good. Does anybody have any other questions? Comments? Well, Scott, I think that might be it for the questions. I just want to thank you on behalf of the Friends of the Library.
Thank you.
And our co-chairs, Karen Warner and Donna Armour. And
yes.
Thanks for taking the time out of your day to come and join us.
Indeed.
And hey, good luck with the festival